Our next presenter is someone who served in the Army as an infantryman, is passionate about serving noble causes, such as providing clean water and cancer research. He has the world's second longest longboard journey at 4,311 miles. Can you imagine that on a longboard? He's here today to share with us about having a mindset that will help you achieve in your business and in your life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Wyatt Welter.
Hello everyone. What an honor to represent veterans as a veteran myself, to be able to be here on this stage amongst so many wonderfully gifted, amazing justice warriors. I really want to talk about a very important paradigm shift that's very unique to us veterans. It is a necessary paradigm shift that we must all journey forward. When we go through an ETS, we exit the military. There is something of a shift that occurs. When we're in the military, we are literally dressed with honor, with integrity, with justice, with selfless service. And we are wearing this uniform that represents these things. When we leave the military, it is as though those things that we are dressed with become unplugged. And maybe, for some of us, there's an initial pathway of all of this new exciting possibility that, we're no longer wearing the uniform, but I've got all these new things that I'd like to attempt to try to do outside of the military. And for some of us others, that disconnection happens almost immediately, where we feel as though there is a hole or something missing that we no longer have. And we're not sure, well, what do we do with this hole? Well, the first thing that I've found to be true, as having left the military, is that I wanted to try to fill these holes with so many different things, and I would point out and I would say, well, I'm feeling this way because of that, or I'm reacting or responding this way because of this, and that went on for some time until I found that it was true that the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Well, what does that mean? That means that we are responsible for the decisions, the choices that we make. If we are always looking at these outer conditions and we're saying that these outer conditions are the reason for my being the way that I am, then we've chose that to be the result of how we respond. We can respond, we can choose to instead to say, in spite of this environmental outer condition, I am going to choose a new path. I'm going to choose a different path. I'm going to be greater in spite of this problem. The first thing that is necessary when we exit the military and we are going through this period where we are disconnected from what we once found to be honorable, we found it to be just, we found it to be, this place of great integrity. We were living this life where it was, people are seeing us as this representative character, and these characteristics. Well, the first thing is to accept, well, we're no longer at that position. We're no longer that warrior that is dressed in a uniform. We are still a warrior, however, that is just dressed a little bit differently. And understanding that new reality of being a warrior just really, it's having to have a shift of perspective. maintaining that warrior outlook and saying, hey, I am responsible for this hole that I now have in my chest, and accepting that I am responsible for being the person that is to fill that hole. Nobody else is. And to take responsibility, and taking responsibility comes with identifying some things that are important to us now being outside of military service that will complete this new journey of living the life of being a man, a woman that has that warrior mindset, that still lives very much connected to justice, connected to honor, connected to integrity and selfless service, but in new forms. We have a lot of business owners that are out here today, and they've taken it upon themselves to fill their life with that same level of justice that they had within the military, to serve in a whole new way, to bring some things that this world desperately needed. And they took that responsibility. Well, how do you take responsibility for some of these things that are initially coming at us when we get out of the military? Instead of blaming everybody else, we gotta stop doing that. We gotta stop blaming other people, and we gotta stop making excuses. Those are the two first things we need to really encounter. Asking yourself, how do other people impact you? What kind of circle of friends are you currently around? Are they providing you a positive, reinforced message? And maybe they're not. Maybe you need to look at who you're being surrounded with. One of the things with getting out of the military is being able to connect with individuals that have similar experiences. And that's one of the biggest struggles that we've come to recognize getting out of the military, is that it's very difficult to talk to somebody that hasn't served. And what I've found is we have a lot of veterans that get out and they try to go back to the old neighborhoods, to the old group of friends, and it doesn't always work out so well. And they've got this hole in their chest. They can't connect the way that they want to. Obviously, we're at an event that has all sorts of resources. So maybe asking yourself, well, who are we hanging out with right now that we're just not able to connect with the same way? Maybe they're not providing us with the type of reinforcement that we really need. Being at an event like this, there's all of these different resources that have these types of connections, and be able to get to a place where we have that positive reinforcement that believes in the message or the ideas even that we have about ourselves and maybe the direction we want to go. A big one, learning to love yourself. What a hard thing to do. I mean, people, I think, spend their entire life trying to figure out how to do that big one. But you know what I found with loving yourself, now as a veteran, we suffer from depression, we suffer from PTSD, we suffer from external events that occurred as we served overseas that we just can't seem to get our mind off of. We take a lot of this guilt. I found that, and this is scientifically proven, so you can look it up, a positive thought is 10 times greater than a negative thought. So what does that have to do with loving yourself? Well, it has everything to do with loving yourself. Because if you have all of these things that are coming into your mind, well, the first thing is you can identify what those things are, and you can replace them with something that is a positive message. There are millions of books out there, all kinds of stuff on personal development that can help you gain some information that would be counterweighted to that negative stuff that is infiltrating your mind, this Godzilla that maybe you have built up for yourself just through repetition of just having bad thoughts. They're coming in, saying bad things. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I am this way because of that. And I just I could never succeed because of what has happened to me. Saying things or incorporating things that are of a positive nature and saying, well, Helen Keller, for example. Helen Keller was somebody that should have never succeeded. She had no reason to love herself. She was very much disabled, but she said things and she was able to incorporate things and understand things such as doubts and mistrust are the mere panic of the timid imagination, which the steadfast heart will conquer and the strong mind transcend. And what an amazing message. I first came across that shortly after exiting the military. I don't even know what it meant, but it sounded cool. And so I look at that some more and come to find out that, doubts and mistrust are the mere panic of the timid imagination. And maybe I just didn't have a big enough imagination at the time because I was so focused on everything that had occurred to me overseas. And these thoughts that were just coming into my mind. And, letting go and just incorporating new things that are the embodiment of love. And maybe you've got to force it. Sometimes you've probably heard the saying, you've got to fake it until you make it. Sometimes you got to force yourself to smile in order to eventually feel happy. But if we do these things enough times in repetition, eventually it becomes real, it becomes reality, it becomes powerful, it becomes a force. And we do that consistently, time and time again. And that counterbalances a lot of this bad stuff that we initially feed ourselves. Do not accept the negative emotions, destroy them. So, one of the practices that I had, when you get out of the military, you're beating yourself up unnecessarily. I call it being a rock farmer. Now, what does that mean? Well, picture a brand new farmer that has just purchased a new piece of land. And he's very excited about it. And so he's got his equipment, he's got his tractor, he's got his till, and he gets out there and he begins tilling this field so that he can cultivate here in the spring so he can harvest in the fall. And he goes into this field and he starts turning over the dirt, and what he's finding is all these rocks are coming up. And they're breaking his tills. In fact, it's becoming kind of a disservice to him. He's not able to get the progress that he really wants to make. He needs to get to the point where this field is cultivated, he can get the seed in it, and they can eventually feed his family in the fall. Well, all these rocks are coming up initially. And so what he's forced himself to have to do is become this rock farmer, where he's getting out there, he's picking up these rocks, and instead of just chucking them aside, he's decided, well, I've got this new land here. What I'm going to do with these rocks, I'm going to use these rocks to my best benefit. I'm going to take those rocks, I'm going to build a wall around this perimeter to reinforce the idea that this is my land and I'm proud of it. And so that's what he goes to do. In our thoughts that we come in, that we talk poorly about ourselves oftentimes. We have some external event that occurs in our lives that we just can't seem to ever get over. And that just is this repetitive thing that tells us, I could never be successful because of this. I am not worthwhile because of that. I'm guilty because of this. Those are just like those rocks. They say that the average mind has about 70,000 thoughts in any given day. Now, if we were going to try to manage that and be this type, this rock farmer that is pulling and extracting some of those things out of our minds and trying to build something productive with them, 70,000 thoughts, that's a lot to go through. But the benefit is, with those 70,000 thoughts, the majority of those 70,000 thoughts are repetitive things that we say to ourselves. Now, we oftentimes will say common things. And I'll just use, for example, I'm not good enough. That's a rock. That's a rock that is you've just unearthed. You can easily identify it. It's said in repetition. You can see it well enough that it looks like just this big old boulder that's in the way of everything. And you can take that and you can pluck that out and put it in your field. And how do you use that as a benefit? Well, you have to recognize that, for one, without a challenge, without the darkness, without something that is negative, we cannot appreciate the positive. It is impossible. Two, that negative thing represents the very thing that we seek out to destroy as people who wear a uniform or have worn a uniform that represents honor, integrity, justice, trust, selfless service. It represents the enemy. And as warriors, we have the great benefit to still act like warriors. But it's a different kind. It's not this external warrior where we're going out and we're fighting a visual enemy. We're fighting a new war. And that war is called the war of self. What is the greatest war that has ever been won? That is the war of self. What do we truly want to make of this war? Why did we join the military to begin with? I think for a lot of us, it was probably because we wanted to serve our country. We wanted to protect our families. We wanted to protect our neighbors. And the way that we know that we can do that after the fact that we've been in the service is to know ourselves, because the only way that we can be of benefit to everybody else is to be the best benefit here first. When we're flying in an airplane, the stewardess says, when that air mask drops down, do not take that and put it on your neighbor first. Because by the time you get it onto your neighbor, you're going to probably be out of action. Put it on yourself first so that you have the oxygen, and then you have the ability to help as many people as you possibly can. It's the same principle. You start with you. You start with accepting some of the things that are going on. You have no control over these are external circumstances. You have no control over tomorrow. You have no control over yesterday. Yesterday is just there as a lesson to be learned, to move forward, to be utilized as a historic example of what maybe to do or what not to do. How can I be better? So as a rock farmer, we're looking for these things, we're identifying these things, and we're looking at them, and we need a picture. What is all this stuff? Write it down. Get it out of the head. Get it out of your head. Put it in a journal so it's not bouncing around inside of your cranium. And that way you can start accumulating some of these things, and you can visualize, well, what is this thing that has been telling me all of this stuff? And then I can attack it. I can attack it by representing its opposite. Here's everything that thing is that is telling me all of this negative feedback. What would be the opposite? What would be its nemesis? I'll tell you one thing that it could be. I want to ask a question. I recognize we don't have a lot of people in the audience, but that question would be, how many people have goals written down someplace that is close by? Awesome, awesome, awesome. How many people could pull their goals out right now and say, here's my goals, I carry them around with me every week? Very much awesome. So, common answer. Now let's say this group, all these chairs were full. The usual percentage of people that raise their hands and say, I have goals written down someplace, it's usually around like the top 3% of the group, or 3% of the group is going to have something like that. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's 1%. And I'm not saying that if you don't have goals written down someplace that you're a terrible person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that's how most people kind of run their lives. Now, the wonderful thing about not having goals or having goals is that goals are still awesome. And by having goals, you have the ability to define how you are either going to impact your environment or by not having goals, how the environment is going to impact you. Let me clarify. We all have this great opportunity. When we get out of the service, we have the whole world of possibilities that opens up to our ability to put our hands on. And a lot of times, the majority of the time, most people allow the environment to decide how we are going to impact it. In fact, the environment oftentimes controls the choices or the path that we go down. But I'm here to tell you, this is the one thing that if there was one message that I wanted anybody to get here above all, it would be that is a choice. You have a choice to say, or to allow the environment to impact you, or for you to decide for the environment how you're going to impact it. You also have a choice to say that, if you're saying I'm defeated right now, that's a choice. Because who told you to choose defeat, ultimately? You did. I did. I suffered from depression for 15 years, and I couldn't figure out why all of these things that I was thinking about had to happen in my life. Why me? That was the wrong choice. Because of course me. Because life is always going to be hard, because there's always going to be some kind of push that you've got to make. How are we doing on time? So, last bit of information here. What if you do not have goals? I want to just point out that there are 4 different categories of goals that I think that are most important. And that category is your 1-year goal, your 3-year goal, your 5-year goal, and your 10-year goal. If you can get those in order, and you read those goals every single night, and not just the titles, don't just write titles. You need to get down to the root. You got to have your ambition too. The why. Why is this so important to you? Why are these goals so important? And you take it upon yourself, and instead of scrolling through TikTok or Facebook or seeing what Kim Kardashian is up to at the end of the night, you're reading through those goals, and that's your last thought before you go to bed. I can promise you that your life will not change in 10 years. It will probably not change in 5 years. I'm betting you right now that if you're doing that every single day consistently, your life changes now. Now. But the hardest thing is deciding, what are my goals? Get those goals in order, title them out, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. Well, why do I want these? Why are they so important to me? You get to that place, be consistent. And that will reinforce and incorporate this powerful message that replaces all of this stuff that has been defeating you up until that point. And I hope you also recognize and just take this last message. If you're feeling defeated, if you feel like you're not good enough, I want you to take responsibility. Who told you to accept defeat? You did. Nobody else. Thank you.
Mr. Wyatt Welker, everybody.